Good evening, welcome to All About Auckland. I'm Kane Glass. This week we're at Spinnaker Bay, about 30 kilometres east of the CBD. For about $600,000 you can buy a lot here, your own piece of paradise right next to the beach. This week we look at property valuations and how they work, plus we ask our experts what the Mayor's preferred option for transport funding is likely to be. But first we join keen fisherman and cook Al Brown as he explains his passion for fishing and his views on conserving our fishery.
There are, to me, so many issues and layers to keeping this Hauraki ecosystem in top nick. From a novice point of view, I think it still looks in pretty good shape. It's my belief that it should never get worse than it is today, and that this is the starting point to just make it richer and better and greater for everyone. About 6 years ago I wrote a book, as has been mentioned, called Go Fish. There are 100 odd shellfish and fish recipes in there. And it was really, I wrote about 30,000 words up front, how I looked upon the resource and the state of it at the time. I read a lot of literature, as much as I could as research. A lot of books that were written sort of 50 years ago. And it became plainly obvious to me that, in really simple terms, that the same photos, the same bays, the same Pahurikawa trees there, everything is there, but except that a lot of the fish are gone, or there's nowhere near the numbers. And I looked at it as simple, well, if that was 50 years ago, if we're here now and we go 50 years ahead, there's not going to be much left. And that was something that really sort of, I guess, struck a chord with me. As a person, I'm in the public eye, and I believe it's my duty to speak openly to something that's really dear to my heart. And hopefully I can persuade people, particularly recreational fishermen, because that's what I am, and a cook, to actually make a difference. I can categorically say that I love everything about fishing. I basically think about it all the time. I'm mad keen. But the more I guess, enjoy and understand, or try and understand fishing, I think the more I feel that I have to really spread the message of what it's all about. And it's as simple, for me, things like, I guess, when you're at the boat ramp and you're going out fishing, you've got to understand what your requirements are. And that should be very different each time you're at the boat ramp. If you're having a party, you need a few more fish. If it's just two of you for dinner, you need one fish. I'm not poo-pooing fishing, and if you borrow the chainsaw off the guy on the road, or the mower or whatever, get him a feed of fish, that's part of being a New Zealander as well. But those sorts of things of understanding our requirements, and never ever to freeze fish. I just don't believe in freezing fish. The limit, I can't stand the word the limit. I can't stand hearing fishermen saying we got the limit, or going out to get the limit. It should not be a target. As I say, it's all about what your requirements are when you're and what you need. The thing about fishing, I guess, for most people, and certainly me, is the anticipation, and it's the hookup, and it's the feeling the pressure of coming on a fish. I also do a lot of fly fishing, and I love rivers as much as I love the ocean, and they're another whole separate category not to get into. But I learned very quickly about releasing trout, and I simply get a huge amount of pleasure of releasing fish now. And we all have cameras, and we can take a so the bragging right's still there. But if you look after fish, and you use barbless hooks at times, and you use wet rags, and you understand, how to look after them and put them back, then you can fish all day. And that's the sort of, I love to fish, but I enjoy putting fish back. We're going to get out of this snapper sort of mindset, or blue cod where we are, or whatever. But if you catch a kahawai, to me, the people's fish, is a fish that eats beautifully cooked. I don't know why everyone just says, oh, you've got to smoke that, or oh, I love a kahawai. I look at those as an absolutely magnificent fish, and raw as well. They're just absolutely extraordinary. And I try and get the public to, if they're going to their fishmonger to buy fish if they haven't been out, is that just, even if you are going to have snapper or blue cod or taraki, is ask for a little bit of skate wing, or ask for another fish that normally you would put back, and just cook it. and you'll be blown away generally. And then you don't need, it's not some special secret recipe that you need to have to cook skate with. Most fish eats well if you don't overcook it, and a bit of butter in there, squeeze of lemon juice, and it's happy days. But I think that we need to get that across to people about understanding that each fish is precious and they all eat beautifully, and that we shouldn't sort of have this pecking order that it has to be a snapper or it has to be a heart hooker. I guess other things that I think are important is the lesson for children, and it's great to see some school kids here as well. But that idea of fishing, that I have two daughters, they're now 15 and 13, but right from the word go, before we ever went out in a boat, we went to a wharf and we fished for a little piper, and we fished for a little yellow-eyed mullet. Some will call those bait, I call them delicious. And the idea is that, teaching them all those lessons in a very, very simple way, and that you must, if you're going to kill a fish, you're going to eat it. At Depot, we don't serve fillets of fish in any shape or form. We serve wings, we serve bellies, we serve all the interesting, we serve skate, we serve, and I've got this, I guess for me, I'm very lucky that I have this window to actually show people that, and try and get them to eat the whole fish. And then there's no wastage. And it's also like eating fish, a whole fish on the bone, and cooking it as a whole fish. That's slowing down. And when you slow down, you get more time around the table, which means you get more wine, there's more arguments, there's more everything, and all things that are very, very good. So that's, so many other countries around the world will eat whole fish, and it's just a slow process, picking out the bones, and isn't that a good thing?
We're told that land prices are what's driving our property values up. So how does this work, and what can we learn out of the latest property valuations? We joined the Valuer General at the Council Chamber to find out.
And one of the things you must do, according to legislation, is revalue once every 3 years. So Auckland was last revalued after the Super City in 2011. It's the biggest revaluation in Australasia. 525,000 properties, and they all have to be valued on one common date, which is 1 July 2014. I think Brisbane's the next biggest in Australasia at about sort of 350,000, 400,000. So this is a quantum exercise, especially for one day. You've got 474 billion of total capital value. Residential is 70% of the overall value, and things like commercial, industrial, and the rural lifestyle make up the rest. So just a little bit about my role and why I'm here today. I have to regulate the rating valuations industry. So in effect, I'm an independent statutory officer, which in a way is quite good because it means it takes the role away from councils and puts it into a central government bucket. And I'm the person who sort of wears the responsibility for making the rules and then testing to see that there's reasonable compliance of the rules, especially at revaluation time. And at that time I have to certify each revaluation, so this is common around the country, it's not just an Auckland thing, and I'm really saying that is the process robust, and at a general level are the proposed values reflective of sort of the market evidence that was prevailing as at 1 July 2014. It is a mass appraisal exercise, and the accuracy of it is judged by sort of international best practice, using a lot of statistical testing and other means of testing bulk valuation movements. So it's quite a common process that's used sort of across certainly the Commonwealth and a number of countries in the world. The revaluation was completed by the Auckland Council and quotable value valuers. One good thing they did, or a number of good things, but particularly one, was to get a private valuer peer review of some of the more risky areas such as commercial, industrial and apartment valuations. So I thought that was a very good QA process. It's a complex market. I mean, we are looking at residential up 35% on average since 2011, but obviously within that 35% there's quite a range of ones that haven't moved that much and ones that have moved a lot more than that. We've had the added complication this time of the unitary plan, things like special housing areas and future urban areas have only really come into the play in the last year or so, and values for these have moved up significantly, because effectively what that does is take rural land into redevelopment potential land, and that has a significant impact on values. But individual owners have a statutory right to object to their new values because it's a mass appraisal exercise, and because it's used for taxing. We recognise you need a safeguard, and that's the objection process. Ratepayers will have a 30-day period from the time they receive their notices on the 10th of November to the 19th of December to put an objection in if they want to. And part of my role is to check that when those objections are actioned, that the changes are sort of justified based on market evidence, sales and rentals and that, rather than any sort of rating implications. So I'll be coming along and doing a check probably around March, April next year to make sure that that process has been followed. So there are a number of QA steps there, all within a very tightly prescribed framework, and that is the process. So hopefully in this short opportunity here I can show you that there's not a lot of latitude in the way a revaluation has to be done. It has to be based on market evidence. The rating side is a sort of a separate issue that will be addressed through council down the line, but my role is to see that the values are set in a pure sense based on market evidence and market evidence only. The rating valuation value of improvements is not appropriate for insurance purposes, and you'll get a lot of questions around this, so we can all sing from the same song sheet. Owners need to assess their replacement cost separately because this is a valuation exercise, not a costing exercise.
We're going to have very big jumps in rates for some areas as compared to others, and that's going to impact significantly on people. So the question that I'm putting in, and my concern is that this information is great, but obviously people are interested in planning into the future as to where they live and what kind of expenses they're going to be incurring and what sort of investment they're going to be making, and this is all about that. So how can we get some more information around what these underlying drivers are that may well be intensifying?
Much of the work that's been done picks up on exactly these drivers. The drivers are growth pressures, the availability of public transport, the forward land strategy and the availability of infrastructure, and the kind of community development revitalisation initiatives in these areas. So, Councillor, we will pick this discussion up as, you know, we go forward with our work program on the Auckland Development Committee, but I'd have to say you'd have to be living under a rock not to understand what the drivers are for capital increases in these areas. People want to live in lovely suburbs with good public transport, good community facilities and you know, a good feeling around them, and that's what's driving them. No one wants to live, you know, out on the edge of the city and drive for 2 hours a day. So
people like myself, much maligned individuals who live out in the Outer Hebrides, we then will be proportionally getting a lower rate increases. So our standard of living, if as such, is could be seen to be going up. We're made to feel like transport criminals, but we're not living in a bus shelter, but we do pay lower rates. And conversely, people who maybe live in Kaipatiki and who are benefiting revaluation-wise as a consequence of, I don't know, unitary plan rezonings, they will be paying higher rates, even though they, in most cases, don't get the benefit of selling their properties, do they?
You have to acknowledge that there are drivers of these valuations, and you have to acknowledge that what we do with the long-term plan, the signals that gives to the market, must start to drive things.
Residential value movements have been the largest since 2005, so the first Auckland Council revaluation in 2011 we saw a 2% increase across the board in residential values. This time we're seeing approximately a 35% increase on average for residential values. So we haven't seen movements of that scale since 2005. When we see large increases in residential values, those values are driven primarily by land values, and land values tend to increase more than capital values, which they have at this time, which has the consequence of seeing improvement values reduce, because improvement value is the difference between land and capital value. So the first point is they won't be used for rates until 1 July 2015. A revaluation doesn't impact on the total amounts of rates collected by Auckland Council. It is one of the factors that is used to determine everybody's share. Council is working through the process of the long-term plan, which will flesh out the detail around the rates for 2015. What we say, a change in a property's capital value does not necessarily mean an increase or a decrease because of that change, but it's fair to say if you get the average increase in value, you'll probably get the average increase in rates. In 2011, we had a 2.3% objection rate, which aligned pretty closely with the national average at that time. So it equates to 11,500 objections, which is quite a few, but we are a very big local authority in terms of the number of assessments that we have, but the percentage is comparable to everybody else. In 2011, 2/3 of objectors sought increases in capital value. The effect on rates is not a valid reason for lodging an objection, and ultimately the onus of proof in any objection lies with the objector.
Of which suburbs you've listed, you've got places like Muriwai and Karikari, but not Piha, and also places like Paro and Langholm, but Hui are not there. So I'm just wondering if that's an oversight, or it's just there's certain areas you don't list.
Last revaluation, we released the suburbs by valuation groups, which not are commonly known, and we've got a lot of questions of missed out suburbs. What we've moved to is fire department areas.
Yeah.
It's a geographical boundary set by fire department areas, and it's more commonly recognised by the people that live there. So what we're trying to do is release suburbs that people commonly identify with, and so far that's the best one we've got. There will be some missed out, and there's a lot of suburbs, like you're saying, that are in their own right, and we could probably look at including them next time as separate ones.
Councillor Hulse points out the numbers around the edges of Auckland have shown very low capital growth. That is, they are not attractive places for people to invest in, to have their homes, to have their families living at. And commute may be, the long commute may be a reason, but let's get the real evidence. I also just don't want us to be making the assumptions that I read in this media release of the 19th, I think it was, the 19th of August, where the writer has assumed that access to motorway connections in many parts is the reason why capital values have gone up. I don't see any evidence. I see assumptions, but I don't see evidence. And that's why I want to see that evidence.
Some of the areas, the fact that there's potential for development, and I'm asking here, does it have an impact on my valuation or any of the others?
So the values, firstly, they're based on sales. So if people are purchasing properties that have got development potential and they're paying prices that reflect that development potential, those levels will be applied to similar properties.
Okay. Have figures tracking these increases in valuation over time?
Yes, yes and no. Look, the valuation from 2011 would be adjusted at the end of each financial year to reflect value added through new consent work. So the 2011 valuations would be adjusted at the end of the 2012 year to reflect the new work, and end of 2013 we can track that. Going back prior, because of the legacy council situations, it does get a little messy.
Sure.
We haven't got all that information on hand.
But have we seen those sorts of movements, 25, 30% plus in commercial and or rural before historically? That's my first question. And the second question is more specifically around sales data. When you get one-off anomalies in a small sector, for instance, rural coastal, where a sale potentially to someone offshore has been sort of 200 to 300% above GV. How do you take into account those sorts of variances in the when you're coming up with valuations?
So basically we look at all the sales together in that coded non-market market, and we would sort of, if a sale is not representative of what's happening across the general market, it wouldn't be sort of considered as one that we'd take as a trend, yes.
This week the Mayor's Task Force on Transport Funding is due to report back to the Mayor on its preferred option for transport funding for the city. We asked our experts what they thought the answer would be for the Mayor.
This has all come about because there is a hoarding, if you like, and a control of transport infrastructure investment monies by central government, and an unwillingness to partner Auckland Council and Auckland Transport on its way forward for Auckland. In other words, the Transport Blog's overall high altitude view is that there is plenty of money being invested in transport in Auckland. However, almost all of it, and in fact, if we talk about capital expenditure, new investment from this year on, almost 100% of it is going on one kind of outcome, and that is roads, and in particular bigger and or new state highways.
So if we take that and look at it in the round, you're saying that we don't need any more money, we just need to...
We need to be smarter with it, especially when we have a situation where, and now for years, driving demand, and we have good data on this because every year NZTA collects everybody's odometer reading. We know exactly, we can follow vehicle kilometres travelled in the Auckland region very closely, and it is flat. It is not rising ahead of population growth at all, whereas public transport uptake is running at double population growth. So it's not even just a question of someone's choice. We're just talking about meeting demand.
So really all the board has to come back with as a recommendation to not do anything except pressure to have the funding.
I'm not sure that's in their remit.
No.
But then let's just take that as read. We have a conflict essentially between the government and the council that's quite structural. I mean, we have a mayor that's been elected twice now on a program of greater investment in public transport, and this is of course after a 60-year period of total underinvestment and decline. I mean, it's hardly a...
no, it's not used.
You know. But we have a government who I won't even consider this, and in fact has been not only spending all of the National Land Transport Fund on state highways, but also pulling money out of the general fund to accelerate building of motorways and widening of motorways.
2017 is out for perhaps the CRL.
Well, no, I'm not going to predict that. This is a project of national significance. It just happens to be on steel wheels and not rubber wheels. Every transport project is somewhere. The CRL is no more local than a state highway around Te Puke, or the one that virtually no one will drive on that is about to be built out of Wellington. We have an absolute secular growth in demand on the rail network, 18%. I mean, this is, and you know, 18% if it's maintained for 4 years is a doubling.
The regional fuel tax is not going to run under a national...
Well, they won't. They've already... Well, they certainly, the last administration said you can't do it, and I would be very surprised. This is a very controlling, centralised government. I doubt it will want any local authority to have a new income stream. I mean, this idea that we have to keep building new roads. I mean, New Zealand is covered in tarmac. Driving demand is not growing.
The fuel taxes are out. You're saying that road tolling...
Road tolling is problem...
Congestion charging...
We are actually quite in favour of pricing roads, but for quite a different reason to gathering revenue. Rather, to more efficiently use that resource. And so what that would mean is, in particular, time of day pricing. So we would like to have, if we're going to do it, to have a structure where the high congestion periods, especially the quite short morning peak that we have in Auckland, is priced so that we can shift load, we can more efficiently sweat the asset, if you like.
Apart from what we saw earlier on in the year when they were talking about road pricing, congestion charging, fuel taxes and tolls, no.
So the government's ruled out a couple of those. They've ruled out the congestion charging and the fuel tax. There's not a hell of a lot left.
No, there isn't, and we know the Mayor is currently in Wellington talking to the Prime Minister, Minister of Finance and the Minister of Transport on this alternative funding package. Whether they continue to say no or offer a compromise is yet to be seen.
So what sort of deal do you think might be cut? Well, it's going to be horse trading, isn't it? Because the Mayor wants to get this going 2017 so we can get re-elected, and the government's saying not a dog show.
And I'm afraid that even with a new Transport Minister, that being Simon Bridges, I still say the government is going to say no to Len's wishes.
So that's going to bring it out to what, 2020?
Currently 2020, unless the two targets have been met early.
And that's not really looking like a reality, is it?
The first target of 20 million passengers by 2020 looks on target if the new rail figures were anything to go by this morning, but the 25% increase in city centre employment, they haven't got a breakfast in getting that because the land isn't available for the towers.
Right. So there's going to be some other horse trading if he's going to get it, eh?
There is, and the Mayor might have to so-called bite the lemon, or suck the coomer as it's known here, and just say, okay, 2016's off the table. What about 2018 with these conditions, and if I search some extra funding packages that don't include road congestion charges?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's really it. I mean, I think that Rod Oram put his finger on it when I talked to him 3 or 4 weeks ago about just that if we flog off the airport or part of the airport share structure, we flog off part of the port, maybe we tip in 50% more by those sort of sales, that might help oil the wheels.
It could very well oil the wheels and also reduce the rates burden that the city is currently facing.
Well, it's okay in theory, but in practice there's a huge number of issues that we have to really get our heads around, and one of them is, do we have sufficient capacity in our public transport? You've got to think that 78% of the people that use public transport use buses. Is there the additional capacity there that people are going to be overnight diverted away from using their cars? Because people won't want to use their cars if they see there's an incentive not to use them, which will be that they'll have to pay a lot more in the tolling if that's what's followed.
So that's tolling is going to be the way it's going to unfold, is it?
Well, that's one option that they're looking at the moment. It's tolling, and quite frankly, it's okay in theory. People say, "Oh, yeah, we'll pay a toll," but when the rubber hits the road, so to speak, and people find they're paying $20 or $30 extra a week, that's when it gets a bit difficult.
So this is going to be on-ramp tolling, do you think?
Well, no, that hasn't been finalised, I don't think yet. There's a huge amount of work that still has to go into this, and obviously the council's got to get the support of the government. I think, to get better capacity out of our motorway systems, I would like to see hot lanes where people actually do pay a fee to use a lane, which is, say, high occupancy, or you pay the fee to use it, and you're able to get to where you want to go at a far quicker rate. That may be a way to do it, but to toll everybody, Joe Public, I think is something which we're going to have to look at closely.
Thanks for watching the All About Auckland show. I hope you found the idea stimulating. To watch the show again or to sign up for our newsletter, go to www.allaboutauckland.com. Next week we're going to be looking deeper into the Mayor's budget. Join us.